Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Silver Sunday. This Sunday night, this is March the 20th. So I hope you are well. We are in for a wing-ding of a show tonight as we have a special guest, and we are going to pelt him with all kinds of questions. But first, some housekeeping. Shout out to our sponsor, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you like comic books and comic shows, you need to make your plans to go to Daytona Beach Comic Con. In September, it is, what are the dates? Somebody help me out here. September. It's in September. Look for them. It's on the thing. So look for them on the interwebs, and you'll see the dates. Make your plans. Going to be a fun show. Shout out to Orlando Collector Deviants. Shout out to Kablam, who prints all of our comics. And if you're in the Orlando, Florida area and you want to find some Silverline comics, you need to stop by Coliseum of Comics on East Colonial Drive.
September 10 and 11.
Thank you. September 10 and 11. There is that are the dates for Daytona Beach Comic Con. Make your plans to attend. We will be there, and we expect to see you there.
Mr. Pete's going to be there.
Pete will be there. That's right. He's
all the way from across the pond, right?
He's going to get on a steamer and paddle his way across.
Are you really? Wow.
Yes,
you better start now. He's going to bike all the way over.
All right. So tonight we've got Curtis. Curtis, say hi.
Hi. Sorry, I'll introduce myself. Hey, everybody. I'm Curtis Fujita. I'm the creative director at Silverline. I'm also a martial arts instructor and a comic book creator. So my upcoming comic book is called Shadow Ghost. It's the Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu master. So that's me.
Excellent. Tommy, say hello.
Hey, Thomas Flormonti. Been a comic creator since the early 90s. Actually, Tom's one of the ones that gave me a start way back in the day. We can talk about that at some point. But currently, I've been, I'm a co-owner of Kablam Digital Printing. We kind of talk about that a little bit. But I'm inking for Silverline now the Trump's issue 4. We just finished the Rejects #1. It's been kickstarted. I think we've been getting some reviews. Yeah.
Yep. Some mail calls. Yep.
Yep. And then I'm working on with Mr. Pete on the team up issue 2 just as soon as we finish up Trump's #4. So there you go. Yep.
Excellent. Pete, say hello.
Hello.
Huh?
Who are you, Pete?
Yes, I just pencil the books.
All of them. All the Silverline books?
Well, he said it now. Tommy's already said it. Silverline team up and Trump's #4.
Oh, I'm sorry, I spoiled it.
So how you
I pencil
feeling?
other stuff too, but that's what I'm doing at the moment.
So how you feeling?
Oh, I'm much better now. I'm still testing positive. I'm still testing positive for COVID.
Really?
But, but I feel fine. I got a bit of a cold.
You still sound a little nasally.
Yeah, but no, I'm fine. No, I've had a productive week.
That's good. Lots of pages done, right? Excellent.
Yeah.
There's an editor thing. So how did you get done?
How many pages?
We got 6 pages done this week. I was fairly happy with myself.
Wow, that's excellent.
That's amazing.
I mean, they were for somebody else, but you got 6 pages done.
Somebody else.
I would just like to point out to Pete that that's a mistake because you said I have COVID, but I did 6 pages. So now we expect more from you when you don't have COVID.
Well, they know not to expect too much from me.
You can't let COVID speed the rest of your life.
Slow and steady.
Right. I need COVID speed pages.
Excuse me. Obviously, I can't go to work, so it's great. I just had to draw all day. That's the life. That's the dream. So
why didn't you catch COVID before?
That's exactly right.
Oh, that's not good.
This is really going.
Maybe back in
south.
I get paid, but you know.
Roberta, tell people who you are.
Hi, I'm Roberta Conroy. I'm a current colorist for the Silverline crew on Cat and Mouse and the Silverline Team Up Champion and Miss Fury, which we are doing a second book soon. And I am a former Malibu, the Marvel Comics colorist from the 90s, working with everyone else here.
So do you know Tom?
Oh, I do.
Oh, that's weird.
Sure.
That's weird. How did that happen? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, well, you know.
Huh.
I've worked with 4 of the 5 other people on this phone call.
Yeah.
And we're all still talking to me, which I find even more amazing.
So
I gotta go, Tom. I'm sorry, I'm done with it.
So as we give Tom his introduction here, so I gotta tell you, I gotta open with my Tom story here. And Tom, if I leave stuff out, you toss it in, right? So so a lot of folks know Tom because he is the co-founder of Malibu Comics. He is also the creator writer for Dinosaurs For Hire. Tom is one of the very first people I ever worked for and with. In fact, Tom may not remember this, but when we first, so Cat and Mouse was published by a once in color by an imprint that went belly up. So we took our photocopies, and we took the printed copy of #1. Tommy, you probably remember this. The printed copy of #1, and we took photocopies of the next 3-4 issues of Cat and Mouse, as well as a couple of other books we were trying to do, and we sent them all around. Right. We began to hear from a couple of publishers, but we hadn't heard from Malibu, and Malibu's who we really wanted to hear from. They were at the top of our list. So I did what you're not supposed to do. I picked up the phone and I called them. Right? Tom gets on the phone.
Oh, did he really?
And these were this is almost the first words out of his mouth, right?
Who are you?
No.
And he hung up.
Oh, we've been trying to get a hold of you. You hillbilly, don't you know you're supposed to put telephone number on your letters?
Oh. Did you not do that?
I didn't.
Wow.
What?
All I had was an address on there, right? And that's how we had heard back from a couple of other places. Is they sent us.
They wrote you back saying no. So that's
no. That's another story.
Okay.
No, but that was my introduction to Tom right off the bat. You hillbilly, don't you know you're supposed to put telephone numbers on your letters?
I like to cut right to the chase. Because in those days we didn't have a large staff. I think there's Scott, there's Dave, there's myself, there's Chris. There might have been Mickey and Dan.
Yep.
There might have been an accountant, and there might have been a receptionist who was Scott's assistant. And that was it. So the chances are you could call the office and still get one of us on the phone just because everybody was busy. So whoever's turn it was to answer the phone would pick it up. And I don't have time for small talk. I got comics to put out. So I don't
That's right.
I don't have time for, oh, hi, Roland. What a lovely thing to do to talk to you. It feels so great. It's like, no. I learned how to talk to people from my friend Mike, and from Howard Chaykin from Harlan Ellison, which is like, you just get right to it. What the hell do you want? Why are you calling? I don't want to hear about your family or your lunch or your favorite movie. I publish comics. You want to make some comics? Let's go.
To this day, that's the way Howard. I still can't get past it. I saw him at that same convention. Howard greets me, "F you, Roland." That is the way he says hello to me.
That's right.
As we walk up, he sees me. He smiles, right? It's a big smile, and he's friendly, and he extends his hand to shake my hand. But it's "F you, Roland." I'm like, wait, what?
When Harlan Ellison would call me at the office, and I would pick up the phone. Hello. I don't know if I can. I can't really curse on the broadcast air here.
We're like a PG-13.
Okay. And I would pick up the phone and I would say hello, and he would go, "What the F are you doing, Mason?" That's his greeting. Award-winning science fiction author Harlan Ellison. That's the way he greets me. But that's also the way he marks his territory. Like, he wants to know, are you going to give it back to him in that same way, or are you going to cower? And if you cower and go, "Oh, I'm sorry, Harlan, I didn't mean to answer the phone that way," then you're done.
Then you're toast.
Yeah. So if you give it right back to him, then it's like, oh, okay, we're not equals, obviously, but we'll then start talking about old 1940s public domain comic books.
Right. Yeah. So I worked with Tom for the first couple of years, almost exclusively. I knew who the other people were, probably because I talked to them here and there, but I never worked with Chris really until Rocket Ranger, and then Chris was the editor of that. But I dealt with you through all the other stuff.
Yes, you were my guy.
Yep. Until I moved out there and became staff editor, and then I answered to Ulm.
Yes.
And that was just the weirdest thing. It was the weirdest transition because you were the guy that I'm like, okay, here's Tom. I go to Tom. Okay, Chris is your boss. What?
Right. My job was to just soften you up and get you to feel good about moving to California. And then it's the bait and switch. And then once you get to California, you're Chris's problem. But I was never at the same time, because Chris and I shared editorial duties at that time. Like, I had half the books and he had half the books. And then we were switching. Once the Ultraverse got going, he became the full-time editor-in-chief, and then I became like the everything person.
Right.
And so I wasn't even editing a book at that point. I didn't work with any creative people. I didn't do anything. Mostly I would just sit in my corner and complain. Well, that's not the way we used to do it. That was my job.
Yeah. Tell the rest of us we're doing it wrong.
That's right. Not this way. Don't you guys proofread this stuff before it goes down?
Right. Yeah. or have these emails with these long bullet lists, right?
Right. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I'm glad those never got saved.
Well,
got them all saved.
I still have some of them because I thought they were works of art, things of beauty.
I have a few. I have a folder that has a smattering of things that I'm like, man, I was reamed with this one, or good things, right? Dan Danko put together a list one time of the editors and their see if I can remember that. It was the on-time shipping, returnability. So he put together a list of all the editors at the time, and I won't be calling out any names, but I kept that because it made me look really good.
Right. Well, that was you were the only person that we had hired at that point outside the company who actually had experience putting out a comic from start to finish.
Yeah.
Like you knew same thing you do with Silverline. You know how to, not just the writing. Some people only know how to write a comic book.
Right.
But there's some people who know how to write a comic book and then know all the pieces of it, even when it goes to the printer and comes out at the other end. Like there's no, and I think at that point, you were one of the few people that we knew who knew that process, or at least and understood it, because you can know the process, but you have to understand it, and you have to understand, the 30-day window that each step takes.
Right. Yeah.
Like the penciler, if the penciler is going to be late, then your inker is going to be late, then your letterer is going to be late, then your colorist is going to be late, and the only way you make up that time is just yelling at people, and that's not going to be good. Your pencil is late, so I'm going to have to yell at 4 people. That's not going to endear you to anybody. So,
that's true. That's right. Yeah. Or they'll call you like Walter did, and say, "Yeah, I'm going to fire you." Right.
Right.
You're fired.
You're fired.
So Tom, I know that you've done a handful of other things since then, right? Because I am reminded frequently that Malibu is getting further and further in my rearview mirror.
Yeah, it's the 30th anniversary of its death is fast approaching.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, so you've done a lot of things since then. Give us some of the highlights, some of the things that you're proud of.
Nah.
Well,
I after I quit Malibu, I worked in television. I still work in television for a long time. I write and develop TV shows.
You did some Malcolm in the Middle.
I did from Dumb Luck. I got involved in Malcolm in the Middle for a couple of episodes because I'd written the Malcolm in the Middle books for Scholastic, and then the Malcolm people called me in and wanted to meet with me and Dan Danko because he was writing the books with me, and that's how we got to work on the show. And then we worked on a bunch of shows that nobody ever heard of, like Supernormal and Pet Alien and Rob Dyrdek's Wild Grinders and Captain Flynn and the Pirate Dinosaurs, and we created a show for the BBC called Leonardo.
And
Pete,
then
Pete, have you seen that one?
Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
There's the guy who saw it.
That's right. It's the one. And
I think it's the one I'm thinking of.
It was set in Renaissance Florence.
Yeah. That was good. I enjoyed that.
He was involved in conspiracies, and he used early examples of his inventions as prototypes to solve crimes. He was like a Renaissance Batman.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
What was that? What? Yeah, everyone liked that, didn't they?
Do what?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, there. I love you.
Just me there.
Then we worked on a preschool show for Nickelodeon called The Fresh Beat Band, and then we worked on an Italian TV show called Bat Pat. So we've done, I think Dan has the count, but we've done something like 600 different episodes of children's television over the years.
Good grief.
Wow.
Either as writers, story editors, head writers, stuff like that. I worked on a show called True in the Rainbow Kingdom, which is on Netflix. I wrote a bunch of them, but I was also the comedy consultant. So every script had to pass through my computer so that I could laugh it up.
Nice.
Then I still dabble in comics every now and then. Somebody calls me up and says, "How do I do this?" Yeah, I'm sure you get those calls too, where there are a lot of people in advertising or publishing who look at comics as some kind of magic thing and don't know how it's done. And so I know a guy who makes comics, I'll call him. How do you make comics? And then, 90% of the time when you explain how it's done and what the process is and what it costs, they run away.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Never mind.
And then every now, why should it take 6 months?
Right. Why can't you do this by next week?
Right. Where do we begin? And so, so we do that. And then I work for this advertising agency in Kentucky doing comics. I just finished editing a graphic novel based on a guy's memoir about Rwanda.
Wow, cool.
And I do a comic strip called Draw to Discover, which is a science-based 5-panel comic that comes out every 3 weeks. I think I just wrote the 5th one. Then I have a show in development that was absolutely positively 100% definitely going to happen right before COVID, and then all of a sudden it wasn't 100% definitely going to happen, and then it was, and then it wasn't, and then currently it is, and I get called every 2 months to sort of fix it back up as new financing comes in or falls through. So that's what I do.
It's a merry-go-round. Yeah,
it is.
Got a couple of comments here already. Here, James Davis says, "Greetings, everyone." What's up, James Davis? Bobby Weskovich says, "Hello, Big Dummy. Y'all on Facebook at home? Hello, Screw Loose." Bobby Weskovich is my father-in-law there, Tom.
He talks to you like I do.
Yeah, yeah,
That's nice.
Fruit Bat says, "Hello. What's up? What's going on, Fruit Bat?" James Davis says, "I have a few of the Pet Alien cartoon DVDs."
Oddly enough, I do too.
I don't have any of those. James says, "I think one of them is Spaced Out."
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
I think there's 2 or 3 DVD collections.
Wow.
And I did not get them, and I don't get paid for them. So
wait, you don't?
No, animation writers don't get royalties or residuals or anything like that.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's brand new news to me. Really? So you just get paid the fee to script it? Yeah, the flat rate.
Now there are ways that you can cheat that. Like if I wrote a song that appears in the episode, I'm a member of BMI, the songwriting residual collecting place, and then I get money from that. And then there's a weird kind of collection agency that collects royalties from overseas broadcasts. So every 6 months or so, I get a check for about 14 cents for something that I can't explain why, but I dutifully cash it.
Of course.
Then, but yeah,
like what I get from Comixology.
That's right. You mean Amazon?
Oh yeah, it's Amazon now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You don't get royalties or residuals from cartoons.
Yeah. I did not know that. That's interesting. I think I've still got a couple of you and Dan shared some of your early scripts with, because I was teaching animation at one point in time. They've since removed that part of the program, and I had some animation stuff from you and Dan that was part of my class.
Aha.
So yeah, with your permission, of course, but that was a long time ago. Yeah.
Did you give me money?
No, I did not.
I'll have my accountant send over an invoice.
That's the way it's supposed to work in writing, right? I
That's right.
just use it and don't give you money.
It's as if you found it on the internet.
Right. Everything's free on the internet. All right, so Tom, we're gonna pelt you with questions.
I have one for you first, though.
Okay.
You have a book that's spelled Beah.
Yes.
How do I say that?
Okay, Tom. I'm going to ask you to remember your most memorable role in conversation, and just imagine me saying, "Yeah, we were out camping and we saw this bear. It was this big bear, and we ran because it was a bear."
Well, that's what I figured, but I also thought it might be like Aunt B from Andy Griffith, some variation of that. So no, it's bear. It's like the traditional Southern method of saying bear.
Bear. That's it. Yep.
Okay.
It's a bear.
Now you can start with the question.
Okay. Hyper Potato says, "I'm late." Well, welcome, Hyper Potato. We're just now getting into questions, so if you've got them, pop them up there. We'll ask Tom. So the first thing we're gonna get to started with Tom. Is why do you love comics?
Jeez.
So
I think. But do I love comics though?
well, that okay. So that
Well, I
that
think-
could be the question.
I think I love comics because when I was a kid, there weren't a lot of things for me to read that I was interested in. So when I was in high school, for example, it was all Shakespeare, and it was all leather stocking tales or James Fenimore Cooper or whatever, which are all fine, but that's really it doesn't speak to me.
Right.
It's like the stuff I watched on TV was Lost in Space or The Avengers or Land of the Giants or Wild Wild West or whatever.
Johnny Quest,
even the Flintstones or the Herculoids or whatever. All that stuff was endlessly fascinating to me. I love that stuff. And the only thing that I found that connected with that was comics. And you could read, you could read a comic in 10 minutes. So you could plow through like 30 comics and think, I'm cooking. I am reading at a furious pace. You read your one little book. You read your Leather Stocking Tales or your whatever. I read 30, and so, but I liked it also because I love the mix of art and story. I like the way everything worked together. I had no understanding at the time of how it was made. I didn't realize it's made by old white people in New York City, and they're trying so hard to be like hip happening dudes with their comics and their old man slang or whatever. But I loved them. And when I was sick, and I would stay home from school, which is like the golden hour.
Yeah.
Then my mom would go to the drugstore and pick up my prescription for whatever I needed, and she'd come back with like a dozen comics.
And you grew up in like sort of middle Western Virginia, right?
Well, I grew up if you look at Virginia like a triangle, I grew up in the corner of Virginia that's just under West Virginia.
Right. Yeah.
And so it was in those days, it was small, it was rural, it was, comics were hard to find except at a drugstore.
Yeah. Yeah. And they were easy to find there, right?
Yeah. You couldn't find everything, but you found enough.
So Hyper Potato says, do you remember your earliest comic projects prior to Malibu? And then how did you get involved with Malibu? I know the second part of that, I've heard the second part of that, but what were your earliest comic projects, Tom?
I was working, because I guess the hardest thing is that a lot of people don't understand is I had no desire to work in comics. Like I didn't have that dream where I was sitting at home going, I got to make some comics. I gotta write some comics. I gotta draw some comics. I didn't have that burning desire. So I'm the stupid one who just sort of, that people look at and go, no, it doesn't happen like that. Nobody does that. And then I just sort of fell into it. I was working, I was living in Connecticut. I was working as a cartoonist, and I had work that was published in Playboy and the Wall Street Journal and TV Guide and all this stuff. And because I was freelancing, I needed a lot more money. So I ended up getting a job
Hey, imagine that.
Freelance living, it's great when your expenses are small, but when you want to have like a life, like you want to date, you want to go out to dinner, you want to have a car,
you want to buy food,
you want to buy food, you kind of need a job. And so so I got a job at Fantagraphics because I'd worked on my college newspaper. I had paste up and art direction skills, and so they hired me to be like a paste up guy.
Really?
Yeah, and that's in the pre-computer era. That's where you would actually take the text and paste it down on the page. Like an Amish person would do.
Right. You were still doing that when I arrived out to California, actually.
Yes.
Yep.
And in the early computer days, the graphics design programs are so terrible that we used to print it out. we would just print it out and paste it up the old-fashioned way because it was the only way to maintain any kind of control.
Right.
So I worked for Fantagraphics as an art person,
like a paginator kind of guy.
I always joked that I was the guy that put the page numbers on issues of the Comics Journal and Amazing Heroes. That was, that's the extent of it. But I sort of thought, I'd love to make like a funny thing. So I created a magazine called Honk for 3 issues, which was a mix of interviews and comics that Fantagraphics published. And then I did, when Fantagraphics moved to California, they brought me along, which was great because now I was finally in California. And then I left Fantagraphics, and Jan Sternad wanted to do a similar funny thing for his publishing company. So I created a different funny magazine called Splat, which was all goofy cartoons and stuff. And I found that I liked putting together stuff in a comic book package, but I really didn't think anything about it really as like a job or a career or whatever. And then it was Obridge. It was Dave Obridge.
Yeah.
I knew him at Fantagraphics. He left Fantagraphics. He'd gotten a job at Sunrise, the comic book distributor that was near Long Beach, California. And Dave had convinced Scott to finance a comic book company, which would be called Malibu Comics. And then Dave called me up, and it was really this easy. He said, "Look, I don't want to do this by myself. You know how to make comic books. Can you come and sit in the office with me?" So I said, "Yeah, I'll do that. Let's start making comics." And that was the plan. There's no, now it's all venture capitalists and funding channels and P&L statements and all that. No, we're just 2 idiots who had a backer and just said, let's do this for a while. Let's make some comics and see what happens. So that's how I got involved in Malibu, is that Dave sort of created Malibu and ran it for like 3 days, and then he called me up and said, I should really have some company. So then we and then Chris
how'd Om get involved?
So Dave knew Chris from Sunrise because Chris worked in the Sunrise warehouse. He was the guy who did. So Dave handled the comics part, and Chris handled the board games part because Chris was a big
yeah.
And so Chris heard through the office gossip that Scott was starting this company that Dave was going to run, and then Chris said, "If you guys are starting a comic book company, why don't leave me here." He was actually much more aggressive about it than I made it sound. But he basically just said, I don't want to sit in a warehouse all day. So I want to do this. And so he came aboard, but he couldn't come up to the office because he was still running the games division at Sunrise. So he had to wait till Sunrise went out of business before he could come up and officially sit in the building.
Oh, that's funny.
So
that's
there we all were.
That's a good story.
Sitting in a cold, drafty warehouse in a California winter, trying to make comic books.
Now I remember the address. No, I remember pieces of the address from the Newbury Park address.
Which one? There were two. It's 2635 Lavery Court or 1355 Lawrence Drive.
Lawrence Drive is the one I remember.
Okay, that's when you came on.
Right. Yeah, that's what. But now I wasn't there. I was never in that office. I just remember that address from the packages. The office that you were in when I came out there was the Westlake Village.
Right. The one next to the gym.
Yes.
where Marion McCormick used to work out.
Yes. Potato said, I loved Honk, especially the Calvin and Hobbes issue.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Nice.
There you go. So you got someone who remembers that. Yeah, I don't remember Honk. Now I do remember a lot of your drawings, a lot of your sketches, and a lot of them are meetings when you weren't running the meeting. You were always drawing.
Right. Yes, because if I'm not in charge, I'm bored. So
yeah, and that was pretty easy to see. So you worked in a handful of different things, and of course, this is we're all about comics here. So you've done prose, you've done animation. What would you say? I always argue, of course, you probably wouldn't surprise you, that comics are the superior entertainment format.
No, you. This is your point of view. You
believe it or not. So what would you say, having dabbled in all of them, what would you say some of the strengths of comics are that the other mediums don't have? Or even maybe some of the weaknesses, some of the strengths and weaknesses. Let's go there.
What era? Because I think the comics that you're doing now are more. And again, I'm trying to be respectful and not mean, so don't take it this way.
No.
Your comics are more like craft beer,
right?
And whereas Marvel and DC comics are more like Anheuser-Busch, Budweiser.
Okay,
and so they're two different ways to do it. Like I don't particularly understand the way Marvel and DC make their comics today. I mean, I don't
think very many people do.
I don't think they do.
I'm not against it. I don't think it's a bad idea. The way they do it seems to work for them, and that's great. That's fine. I just don't get it.
Right.
And so what I like about comics is the way that, because I can't draw, but I have a weird visual sense in that I'm not wordy. So I'm not like a Chris Claremont writer or like a Don McGregor type of writer. And what I like is when I would turn my script in and it would go off to an artist and the penciler would come back from the penciler and they would have seen things that I didn't realize were there.
Yeah.
Or they were inspired to do something. I love it when I was working with Mitch Bird.
Yeah.
I would describe the action, and when I would get it back, it wouldn't resemble the action that I had described, but I would look at it and I would go, yeah, okay, this is way better. And I wish to God I had thought of it this way, because he fixed it and he made me look better. Yeah. And then I realized, now I know what to do. I can change what I wrote to accommodate the art.
Yeah.
That part of the process is really appealing to me, where I had an idea, the artist was inspired to do something that elevated the idea, and now I'm sort of re-inspired to go back and adjust my dialogue to accommodate the pages.
Yeah.
And so I like that very participatory part of the craft. The part about creating that I hate is, the caricature of the novelist who's sitting at his desk all night long with a cigarette in one hand and a whiskey in the other. And he's trying to, he's all alone and he's working on his stupid prose, and he's trying to be inspired or whatever. And the great thing about comics is it's a shared thing.
Yeah.
So I can do part A, send it over to the artist. The artist will elevate it, send it back to me, and then I will hopefully take it to the next step. And then, then the letterer will add to it, and then the colorist will add to it. And, the scene that I thought should be dark comes out to work actually better when it's brighter, or the thing that I thought should be brighter actually works better when it's lit from the back. So I love how every person in the process brings out more of it. And so by the time, and I realize I'm talking way too much.
No,
by the time it comes out as a printed comic, it's a lot different from when I started it, but it's better because everybody had a piece.
Yes,
and moved it forward.
But you may remember I'm a proponent of the Marvel method, and it's for that very reason. I think that I've seen too many full scripts from writers who just don't get it. And it's not that their stories, if you look at their stories as stories, it's like, okay, this is not a bad story, but the way you have broken this down in your panels just is not the strongest way to do it. But then when you give that to an artist, they're kind of shoehorned to tell it that way, Right.
I don't think the artist is there to just sort of do what the writer says. And
which is often the case in a full script.
Yes, and it's often the case at Marvel and DC, and it's often the case at other comic book companies as well, where you have to fit and it was certainly the case in the Ultraverse where you had to do, you had to follow, because it's the corporate thing. It's the demand where, we're doing it this way because the toy company, the movie deal, the whatever, all has to line this up. And so I think that's different than when it's just, just people making comics.
Yeah. Yeah. Hyper Potato says Marsha worked out there. Yes, she did. And he says that's Fruitbat 36 says that's a great analogy, the craft beer one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we've now got up on the screen. Tommy, what are you working on? What are inks there?
What?
Oh, he's muted.
What's he doing?
I drove him
That's
away.
page one. That's page one. I recognise that terribly drawn person.
Tommy, you're muted. You can't figure. Maybe I can unmute you. Let me see if I can. Yeah, there you go. Go ahead.
There it is. Yeah, this is Mr. Pete's page one of Trump's. He finally did it. He finally did page one, so I'm working on it now. Page one of Trump's issue 4. There you go.
Yeah.
So do you always? Oh, sorry, Ron. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Do you always ink like? Well, to me, it looks like you're just inking randomly as opposed to
all over the place.
Yeah, you're all over the place.
Yeah, I do a little here, and then I do a little here, and then I do here.
I've seen him ink enough pages, Tom. The answer is yes. That's exactly what he does.
It's funny because this sort of ADHD approach is what I do. Is when I start writing, I might have an idea for the middle part, and I'll write them and be inspired, and then the middle part will come first, and then I'll have to write the front part, and then write the back part, and then go back and fix the middle part. So I'm all over the place too.
No, Tom. What I usually do is, because we're streaming this, I think people don't want to see me inking buildings, so I just jump to the coolest thing, and so that way I'm trying to sell something fun for people to
watch. Any buildings this time?
But there might be some building fetishists who are out there who would just,
Well, then they don't want this issue.
Because I think there's an Overstreet category for good brickwork.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna work on this building here then. See how many people go away after inking this one.
What about fire engines? Pete loves to draw fire engines.
I just don't like vehicles. I don't like them.
Do a man in a businessman's hat, and then do a sports car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fruitbat's got another question here. He says, "How many comics did Malibu launch with? What were they, and who worked on them?" So, all right. So go back to the early days. What were the first comics that Malibu did?
I can't remember.
You guys did a bunch of stuff.
A lot of black and white.
Yeah. So here's the thing about this kind of comic book company is that so we launched with 3 titles. We launched with R.A. Jones and Butch Bertram's Dark Wolf.
Okay, I remember that one.
Which had come in from Elite Comics in Texas, had published at least 1 issue, maybe 2 or more. And they went out of business, and R.A. and Butch didn't have a place to take it. And so it would come in packaged. So like R.A. would write it, Butch would draw it, pencil and ink it, and then Butch's wife would letter it. And so it's like one of the easy comics.
Mm-hmm.
Is you're not really editing because it's creator owned. And so you just have to make sure that they don't screw it up.
Right.
But you're not really giving RA story advice or Butch art advice. And then the second one was Libby Ellis, which was from a guy named Dennis Pimple, and Norm Dwyer was the artist. They were in Chicago. And Libby Ellis was packaged as well. Dennis wrote it, and Norm did the pencils, the inks, the letters, and even colored the covers. And that's when we thought, well, this making comics is great. Other people put the comics together.
They're doing all that.
Do anything.
Right. There's certainly a level of craft here. So, that's great. And then Dave had made a deal with a friend of mine named Mike Valerio to publish. He had a screenplay idea for a book called Stealth Force, which is about 4 secret agents who flew around in what was then the hot military plane, the Stealth Bomber.
Yeah.
And they would go into various countries and they would act like James Bond spies or whatever. And he wanted to eventually turn it into a movie, but he was willing to break the screenplay down into comic book form. And so he'd already been hired by Dave before I got on board. And so then I actually had to work. I had to go find an artist and actually do the job of an editor. So Stealth Force became the third book for the first launch month.
Wow. Huh. I remember. I think I remember Stealth Force. I'd have to see some covers. I think I remember that one. Libby Ellis is ringing a bell, but not particularly. I'm not seeing any visuals here. Hyper Potato says, "Whatever happened to Dennis Pimple? Dude could draw."
Well, Dennis Pimple was the writer, so
okay.
No, he couldn't draw. But Norm was the artist. Norm was somewhere on the internet. Somebody will point this out and say, "Nah, Tom got it wrong. What an old man memory." But I believe Norm actually had a career in graphic design or advertising or video games or something where he was actually making, big money.
Yeah.
And comics, there were maybe you remember this too. There were a number of people during those go-go years of the great black and white boom where they thought, I can quit my day job and I can get some of that turtle. I can get some of that turtle money.
Turtle money. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Everything will be great. And then, only Turtle gets turtle money.
That's right.
And after 2 sets of miniseries for Libby Ellis, I think Norm had realized that he's not going to be able to quit his day job.
Yeah.
And so I sort of, it's the same thing. If you're not drawing you get, when you're putting out 10 or 12 comic books a month, you're really busy. So you lose track of people. If you're not publishing their work, I don't really know you anymore because
it's sad but true things,
Yeah, I've got 12 comics to put out and, I'll see you at a convention.
That's right. Yeah. Maybe.
Right.
Yeah. If I'm not on break when you walk around.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what that's one of the things that I always tell people that hey, it's important to with my students, right? So it's important to maintain your contacts. One of the things we beat in their brains, Tom, at Full Sail University is it's all about networking. Is that people want to work with people they know.
Yes.
And like you're getting ready to start if you get ready to start a company, you're going to automatically call the people that you know and that you like and that you want to work with. You're not going to just say, "Hey, I'm going to start a company. Who wants to be involved?" You might do that later,
right?
But
when one of my friends screws me over,
right, or can't meet the deadline.
Yeah, but there's you hear a lot of this too of, well, it's all who you know. That's how you get in. Well, yeah, A, that's not a bad thing. Yeah. And B, every job I've ever had, even not comics, has been because I knew somebody who knew somebody.
Yep.
Like I got a job in a grocery store when I was in college because I knew a guy.
Yeah.
I got a job at a computer store because my dad knew a guy.
Yep.
And so it's everywhere you turn, there is no, there could easily have been 100 people who wanted the grocery store job, but I got it because, I knew a guy.
Yep.
So,
and that's just the way the world works.
Right. And so you've got it because I guarantee you the thing is, this is the beauty of it. I'm hardly the best writer of anything, but I know a lot of people. And so when somebody wants somebody who's not the best writer, my phone rings. Because
I know a lot of people. And the other important thing is, and I know you know this, is that you have to deliver.
Yes. Well, there's that thing that Neil Gaiman says. There are 3 things. You can be good, you can be fast, or you can be demanding. But you can only be 2 of them.
2 of them, yeah.
Or something. I'm screwing up the quote slightly. But you can miss a deadline if you're great and easy to work with, but you you can't miss the deadline, be difficult to work with, and
Right.
be a pain.
Yeah.
Even if the work is great.
Right. Yeah. There's another question here before we get to my next question for you. Fruitbat36 says, what was the connection of Eternity Comics and Malibu? He said, I had 1 or 2 issues of Liberty Ellis.
I don't know. How much time do we have?
And
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
And do the other people in this group want to have a conversation?
Tom, I'm here to listen to you, man.
I'm here to color, so
All right. Are you coloring
Whenever.
while we're talking?
I'm coloring while he's drawing. Yep.
Oh, excellent.
We could swap it out anytime.
So, wow, where to begin? So here, I'll try to be brief. So when Scott was the financial backer behind Malibu Comics, it turns out that Scott was also the backer behind a bunch of other comic book companies.
Oh, I wondered what was the deal there. Yeah.
He put the money into Eternity Comics in Brooklyn, New York, and he put some money into Amazing Comics in West Virginia.
Okay.
And then because everybody dreams in turtle money in those days.
Oh yeah.
It turned out that a new comic book company with a new #1 would actually sell better than a new #1 from an existing company because retailers were thinking of turtle money.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So then Scott
they were hoping you would somebody would light that fire too, right?
Right. And so Scott then financed the Eternity guys to make another company called Imperial. And then Scott financed the Amazing guys in West Virginia to make another company called Wonder.
I remember Wonder.
So Scott, those were David Campini's companies.
Yeah.
And so then Scott had those 4 companies. And it was Scott's dream to have this weird vertical integrated company where comic books would be created by companies he owned. They'd be distributed through Sunrise Distribution, where he would be able to mark up the prices of books that were hot because he would have them in inventory.
Right.
And then he would sell them by mail order through another company that he had. So he would basically triple dip for the same product.
Good grief.
Well, that's like an Ivan Boesky, Bernie Madoff type of scheme, which only works when the industry is healthy and nobody cares.
Right.
And then the black and white industry collapsed, and then Sunrise collapsed, and then those companies collapsed. And those companies collapsed right about the time that Malibu Comics started. But the Eternity name still had retail value.
Yeah.
And so Malibu Comics then became the holding company, and then the Eternity imprint was imported over to the Malibu Comics offices. So we quit calling the books Malibu on the titles, on the covers, and then we put Eternity as the company imprint.
Yeah. And they also, a lot of them still had, I can remember the Malibu graphics.
Yeah.
As the sort of the corporate thing.
That was Dave Obrich's thing. He was trying to make it sound like we were like an important thing. Like we could be the publisher of anything, not just comics.
Gotcha. Huh. Hyper Potato says, I'm here for the 80s comics history and Marcia at the Gym Stories.
Hey, you know what? She was very nice.
Yeah. I remember some of those stories. I never went over to, I'm kind of like Captain Hammer. I never went to the gym.
we had a guy, and it's always a guy. We had a guy who worked at the gym, who worked at the snack bar at the gym, and he would call us up. Marcia's here today. And we had a deal with the gym where if we didn't tow their cars away from our parking lot, they'd get us a free membership.
Yeah.
And so then a bunch of guys would run over and hoping to catch a glimpse of Marcia at the gym.
I remember that actually. I remember asking about the parking lot specifically.
Yeah.
So Curtis, Pete, Tom, Roberta, y'all have questions?
Actually, I have a question or kind of more clarification because one of the stories that I remember Tom kind of telling, but I don't remember all the details was I've always felt that Tom's like very clever and in the sense that I always noticed that you would never take no for an answer. You would just find a creative solution to get the yes that you wanted,
That's correct.
In a good way.
That's true.
And I remember when the Dinosaurs For Hire, there was something that happened with the logo where, and I think had to do with, we had a Malibu Interactive branch, and with you getting credited on it. And I believe that wasn't going to work out the way you wanted it.
Tom's already a member and he's laughing.
Yeah, and so you did something with the logo.
Yes,
I'll let you pick it over, but I remember this is like, to me, was quintessential Tom Mason being clever kind of situation. So you could share that.
Here's the thing is that and pay attention, kids, because you can use this too. Is that so? I had this project called Dinosaurs For Hire, and we had the Malibu Interactive division, and that was run by Bob Jacob. And Bob had made a deal with Sega to have Dinosaurs For Hire turned into a video game, and it was going to be produced out of house. So Bob's division wasn't going to do it. There was a studio in Diamond Bar, California, that was going to actually make the game. And then in those days, I was not necessarily smart, but I was savvy. And I knew from reading over the paperwork that there was no guarantee that I would actually be credited as the creator of Dinosaurs For Hire in the game. And so at worst, there'd be or at best, there'd be a tiny strip in the instructions that would just say, based on a comic book created by Tom Mason. And so I argued with Bob briefly, because nobody ever argued with Bob, because he would sort of puff up like a big puffer fish, and then he would start to exhale a bunch of expletives and loud obnoxious comments. And so once it was clear that my name may or may not be associated with the game, I thought, well, screw this. So I went to I think it was Tim Eldred, who was the designer that we had on staff at the time, and I said I would like a new logo for the comic book when we relaunch the comic book, and we can use it on the game. And then I would like I would like my name to be put as part of the logo in such a way that it cannot be cropped out. So when the packaging people from out of the office came and said, we need the logo, I had the logo, and there's my name. So my name is on the cover of the game.
That's great. That's great.
Remember that.
Did Bob Jacob realize, or did it just go over his head, or did
went right over his head? Because at that point, it now existed as the logo. So it was no longer a matter about giving me credit or not giving me credit. It was not a thing to fight for, because I had my name in the logo.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things about that book was always, I thought was so singular, was whenever somebody got killed, whether their head was getting chopped off or they were getting riddled with bullet holes, it would just say, "I am slain," and it was like clockwork in every issue.
that comes from that wasn't in the original black and white version. That comes from the color version when I got the pages in from Mitch, and when Mitch would stage the fight. One of the things he would do, one of the great things he would do, is he would always add characters in the background, and there'd be a little bit of white space, and I can't leave white space. Right. I can, obviously, for the colorist or whatever. I'm fine with the space, but if it looks like a word balloon could fit, I'm gonna think of something to put in there, because it's always like, I think this guy needs to say something, and then it became, the guy getting stabbed going, "I am slain," or "Oh, my head fell off," or
So funny.
And so the more I did that, the more Mitch would keep putting people in the background, and so then when Mitch left, I was really, well, Roland knows, when Mitch left, I was like super bummed.
Yeah.
That's great.
And here's the thing: the great thing too is, I never talked to Mitch. I never met him. I don't know what I don't know what he sounds like. I don't know anything about him.
Even till today, you've never met Mitch?
Never met Mitch. Never talked to him. I knew him. I knew him through Roland.
Yeah.
And through working on Cat and Mouse. And I wanted him on Dinosaurs For Hire. And he agreed to do it. And I sent him the scripts, and he was a workhorse.
Oh man, yeah. Yeah. Like clockwork.
Yeah. I always thought once he started doing the Green Lantern stuff for DC, I thought, this guy's on his way. And then, things just happen, and he's not.
It's Tommy's like, yeah.
Right. I'm sure there's a story nobody wants to get into, but
oh yeah. So since we're talking about Dinosaurs For Hire, I'm sorry, Curtis, was that it?
I had one more.
Okay, go ahead, fire away.
No,
'Cause I've got a big list, and my list can wait. So
one thing I thought was Prototype, right? Which was really great. Ultras characters. I always thought it was interesting because when it started out, it kind of seemed more or less like, it was like an Iron Man clone kind of thing. But then it was revealed, and later on in the series, that the person, Jimmy Ruiz, right, who was actually inside the armor, actually had power and was actually an Ultra. How did that? Was that something in the beginning, like right from the groundwork, was part of it, or was that a twist? Because I thought that was a great thing with that story.
The original. This is where I'm going to take credit for a lot of things, and then I'm going to give most of the credit to Len Straczewski. So it's going to be sounding like I talk a lot about myself, but it won't lead anywhere. So I created in quotation marks. The original concept for Prototype was a pitch that I did at the Ultraverse conference called Company Man. And Company Man was the idea of, what if there was a superhero who was basically the mascot for a corporation, and so he would do car shows and boat shows or whatever, and commercials or whatever, but he was actually their weapon. So if you need somebody to interfere with the manufacturing of your competitor in Eastern Europe, you send him in and he'll take care of it. And so that's basically the pitch. And then the other stuff, I think it's Len Straczewski who came up with the name Prototype. It's Len who came up with the Jimmy Ruiz stuff.
Oh, really?
I didn't have Jimmy Ruiz in mind at all. Len brought that in. And then the idea that Jimmy was a battery, and basically the suit was the thing that contained his power as opposed to give him power. I'm pretty sure, I know that didn't come from me because I'm not that smart. I'm pretty sure that came from Len or in conference with the other Ultraverse writers.
Okay.
So I think it was Len's idea to do that. And it was because I think this way. My original thing about Prototype was he would be an old guy, because I love the idea of the old world-weary superhero who has like one last, fight left in him. And Len was like, we're kind of appealing to a younger audience. Maybe we should have, we got a lot of old guys in the Ultraverse. Maybe we should have a young guy. So all that comes from Len.
Well, here's a voice we don't hear very often.
Wow.
Stephen Butler says, "Hey, Tom."
Hey.
Tommy, you're still muted.
It's the which Tom, me or the other Tom?
No, Thomas Flamonte.
Tommy.
Every time he fiddles with his iPad, he mutes himself, and then you can see him start talking, and it's like,
no, my okay, I'm back on. Hey, Stephen. There you go. That's what I said. That's all I said. I'm sorry. I'll shut up now.
I see Steven's stuff pop up on Facebook all the time.
Oh yeah.
He's still got it.
Oh man, he still.
He sure does.
Yep, he sure does. He still got the chops. He's still got the passion.
Very much.
So,
did he go away? Where'd he go?
Oh yeah, he's that was a comment. So since he's here, I'm gonna call him out. You ready, Tommy?
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
Sure. Oh, we've invited him to come show up with us so many times, but Tom, you remember, he lives out in the middle of the sticks.
Yes.
He still lives there, okay? He still lives in the middle of the sticks. And so he's like, yeah, Roland, I need a Dixie cup to get onto the internet. I don't think my connection would be very good. And we're like, just do it anyway, dude. Just do it anyway.
So he doesn't have Wi-Fi. He just has Y.
Right. Yeah. Well, when his electricity goes down, it's because his kids have stopped pedaling the bicycles.
It's like on Gilligan's Island,
right? Steven, good to see you. Cassisi's laughing at us as LOL. Curtis, another question? Follow up?
Just on the, you working with Len Straczewski on that. I mean, comic books are all about collaboration between different creators, but what is that dynamic when it's with another writer as opposed to writer to penciler to inker? Was that a challenge, or?
It can be, but you gotta find a way to make it work. Like if you go in, it's like a marriage or any other kind of relationship where it's not going to be 100% of what you want. So you got to sort of figure out a way that you can still work together and make a comic. So the way we figured it out is that, So I would write 80% or so, maybe 75% of the odd numbered issues. And then Len would do the same with the even numbered issues. And then we would go back in and edit what the other person had done. So that's the collaboration. Rather than we would talk about stuff ahead of time. So nothing was a surprise really. And we would say, this is the plot that we should do. Let's do it this way. If we set this up this way, we can probably get 2 or 3 issues down the road following the same tale. So let's, so we would talk about it in advance. Then I would go off and I would write, and we didn't have to turn in outlines or anything. So we would just write a script. I'd give it to Len before Alm ever saw it. And then Len would, post it. And because I have a tendency to go off the rails. And then Len would send it back to me, and then we would talk again about what Len had done. And then Len would do the second issue, the even numbered issue, and we'd work that same process. And so that's the way we would work.
Oh, that's
that
really
worked.
cool.
That worked. It's not the prototype that I would have done on my own, and it's not the prototype that Len would have done on his own. But I think it's a better version of prototype. And we were in sync. We were never fighting about, oh, you jackass, why did you change this, whatever. It was more like, what's the best way to get to this point in, the story? Because we have 12 issues. We have 12 stories to tell over a year. And we have to do one every 30 days. So, you make it work.
That's really cool. One thing with Ultraverse, I feel like there's so much stuff that nowadays, has its DNA from Ultraverse and from all the stuff Malibu did. And I always thought the most fascinating was what happened with the Exiles. And, like Robert Kirkman, the final issue of, Walking Dead was kind of a big surprise and all that. But to me, it reminded me of everything that was done with the Exiles book for the Ultraverse. And
yes.
Whose idea was that? And how? Because I think when I first started, I remember it was almost pre-Ultraverse, and I saw pages of the Exiles at the company being worked on alongside the Protectors or something. If I remember, I can't remember the full details. Yeah.
So the thing is that we had, so Chris and Dave and I created a book called The Exiles prior to the Ultraverse even being started. And we had hired Paul, I'm going to say his name wrong, I think, Paul Pelletier.
Yeah.
Yep. We had hired him to pencil it, and we had gotten, I'm pretty sure it was Ken Branch who inked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And by the way, that Branch guy, he's good too.
Yes, he is.
And so, and we had it sitting there, and we were working on it, and we were thinking about it, and we were trying to figure out what to do with it. And we realized that nobody really wants a one-off superhero book from Malibu Comics, because they would just, here's what the sales would do, and blah blah blah. And then we got the idea for the Ultraverse, and we went away to this conference with all the Ultraverse creators, and we had this meeting in Gerber. Gerber is sort of like a firebrand in some way. When he gets something in his head, he's like a Marxist on his podium. He's just when we kill superheroes, when we kill our characters, they should stay dead. And it's like, okay, Steve, fine. They'll stay dead. Whatever. And so, and Chris writes it down in the notebook. Steve Gerber says, when we kill people, they just stay dead. And so it rolls around in the back of our head for a while. And then we get back to the office when the conference is over, and we're still rolling around. And then it hits, I forget who it was, but somebody said, we have this book called The Exiles that's not really connected to the Ultraverse because it doesn't have its DNA from the original Ultraverse conference. It's not really in the Bible. What if we kill them all? And what if they stay dead? And so we talked to Gerber about it, and Gerber loves the idea because it validates his theory of killing people and then having them stay dead and not ever bringing them back. And then I think it's either Dave or Chris who said, let's not tell anybody. Like, let's kill them off, but let's solicit it as if the book is still coming out. So we kept it as a secret in the office. Only a handful of people knew. And Gerber kills them all off at the end of issue 4. And we still solicited issue 5. We still did a cover mock-up for it. We still solicited issue 6 through the distributors. and had orders for it. And then the fourth issue comes out and everybody's dead. And then we announce it. Oh yeah, haha, we tricked you. And issues 5 and 6 don't really exist. And so, because that was the only way, because everybody needs to know the advanced information ahead of time now. That's the only way to keep a secret, is if you screw up people's heads. And so the Diamond was pissed off. Useless in comic books, you ain't gonna publish. And Capital City was the same way. Useless in comics, you weren't going to publish. And we said, hey, we wanted to surprise everybody with a story-driven element. What would you have us do? Well,
Yeah.
That's great.
So they stayed dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Still one of the great stories.
Definitely. What was the fan feedback? Were the fans receptive, or I don't recall if there was any...
The fans were still like, what you almost never, because there's no internet back then, so there's no instant feedback. So you just have to go by what you get from the handful of letters you get, or when you meet people at conventions.
Yeah.
You get, most of it is, it can't be canceled because you solicited issues 5 and 6. So they're not dead. And so
yes, they are.
So
Surprise.
You wait and see, because it's not coming out.
They're still waiting.
Yeah, they're still waiting. So, and then, but you get a lot of like, nobody ever does that. Like nobody. That was really a surprise. Like that was really, that was a cool surprise. And then why did you kill? Why did you kill characters I was invested in?
Right.
Like, well, they had to die for the story, and then the story became a surprise.
Because Malibu needed a blood sacrifice.
That's it. One must appease the gods, and I wasn't going to give up my children. So, comic books are all you get.
That's great. That's so great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Roberta, you got any questions for Tom?
Yeah, I thought that there was going to be like a Dinosaurs For Hire show or movie or something. Did that ever?
I am so
take off?
glad you brought up Dinosaurs For Hire, because that's one of the questions I always ask all about.
I want to know.
So the thing is, it got licensed to 20th Century Fox, and Fox wanted to make it as part of their afternoon syndication block because they smelled turtle money. They thought, hey, these guys are lizards. They look like lizards. They're kind of like turtles. We could sell them side by side with turtles, and we could get a lot of dinosaur toys, and we could, because kids love the dinosaurs.
Oh yeah.
And and then they went off and they did some development that they did not like because they couldn't juxtapose the content of Dinosaurs For Hire, which is people getting shot by dinosaurs with actual guns, with the happy jolly Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, it's too tame.
Block of turtles going cowabunga. And so I go into this meeting with the Fox people, and Len Wein is there, and they want to bring in Len Wein to try to make the Dinosaurs For Hire more turtley. And and Len, Len's a valiant trooper. He's a writer for hire at that kind of thing. And so we have a long conversation in the conference room with the Fox people about how to make it. Then they're all concerned, like, do they brush their teeth, and what kind of chair do they sit in, and do they have a clubhouse, a meeting room? And, it's like, and I just sort of like, and I'm sitting there thinking, this is like every Hollywood movie I've ever seen, every Hollywood meeting I've ever seen in a TV show or a movie, right? Where, because the comic is not about how they brush their teeth or what, whatever. And so, but we have this long conversation, and then Len goes off and he does his thing, and he brings it back in, and we have another meeting, and the meeting is basically, we can't, if we try to make them too much like, if we try to make them like we want to make them, which is like the turtles, then we lose all the funny parts of the comic book.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, because it's not a turtles comic book. It's a subversive, angry, violent, volatile piece of angry incel teenager. With it has nothing to do with turtles and pizza and sewer rats. And so
and all of Tom's jabs at the comic book industry.
Eventually they understood that it wasn't going to work, and they canceled it. and it never got out of development. It never got. I have some crappy art that they did.
Oh yeah.
Where they look like 8-bit Nintendo characters.
Oh man.
Oh wow.
It's just that they're hysterical.
But it just can't go anywhere from there.
No. It's because
They're not turtles.
No, and if you want to, and the funny thing is, and I didn't tell them this, but there were other turtle-like properties they could have gotten.
Oh yeah.
Like
hamsters,
gerbils, any of those things, kung fu kangaroos or whatever it was.
Oh yeah.
Could have got it if they want to catch that turtle magic and start living high on that turtle money. There's plenty of places they could have gone. You don't have to take, you can't turn Dirty Harry into Johnny Quest.
No.
It would have been great for Adult Swim or something like Adult Swim. That would have been perfect.
Had Adult Swim existed back then, that would have been the perfect place. You just walk over to Cartoon Network and go, "Well, here I am."
Yeah. So one of the questions, that I pepper you with probably once every 12 months or something like that is, when are we going to see more Dinosaurs for Hire in comic book form?
Here's the thing: is I have all the rights.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've collected them back over the years, and I've sat on them because I don't. Well, for one thing, I don't think I could do the exact same comic book now that I did back then.
Gee, why, Tom?
I think the world is different, and I'm different.
Yes.
So I learned.
Really?
I learned not to be so angry, and I learned not to be. I learned how to tell stories, and that stories are not just a series of unconnected jokes that lead to a conclusion where everybody gets shot. I think,
oh my god, I love it.
So I think there's that, and so I have a take on them, and I have a plot, and I have some other ideas for stuff, but I'm never, because of the way the world works. I mean, like there's no, like Marvel isn't going to do it, and DC's not going to do it, and there's no independent comic book company. Ross, God bless him, I love that guy, but he's not going to do it.
Oh no, it doesn't fit the boom.
Right.
It's not a boom book.
No, and it's not, and I don't want to get, because I do tend to go off on, so I don't want to get anybody in. I don't want to get Ross in trouble. I don't want to get, because he's a Disney guy now, and so Dark Horse, there's nothing there, and Valiant doesn't do that kind of stuff, and so the option left to me is Kickstarter.
Yeah,
and
it's a good one.
I could do that. It is a good one. You seem to be doing just fine.
Yeah.
And so there's that, but then the other, I haven't really figured out if the idea is, yes, Roland's going to do it now. There's a thing, and I see this in other guys, and it's always guys from the interwebs. It's like, well, I had this comic book that was popular in the 80s and 90s, and now I'm bringing it back. And it's like, well, yawn. A lot of people don't really, care. And just because you had a comic book in the 80s and 90s doesn't mean you have staked out any ground in the 2022s.
In the 2020s, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so there's that. And so I sort of sit on it and I think about it and I roll it around in my head. And, I got an artist. I got, I seem to have met a colorist today.
So have you boys read the Dinosaurs for Hire books?
No.
Okay.
They don't. My kids don't care.
Oh, doesn't it just make you cry?
No, because here's the thing. No, because it's like I don't like the same music that my dad tried to get me into when I was a kid.
Well, that's true.
So it's the same thing. My dad would say, "Oh, look, don't you love this?" And it's like, Dad, this sounds like cats fighting. But what my kids like is they like that I knew certain people. Like if I said I used to hang out with the creator of Howard the Duck, that was like, because they could dine off of that at school. They could take that into school and say, my dad used to work with the creator of Howard the Duck. Like that's the thing. And then I once met Mark Hamill, and I once met Ming-Na Wen, and so they like that stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they liked it when they were younger, when they were in elementary school, and I would show up at their school for like father presentation day, I gave the coolest presentation because I would bring in
a bunch of books.
I bring in the books, but I would bring in posters. I would bring in the toys. I would bring in the video games. I would bring in the books. I was like, I look like a store. And I could say to them, this, and they would ask 1,000 questions about comic books and TV and whatever. And I would answer all their questions and I would talk to them. And then my kids were not interested in me at the presentation, but the next day when their friends would come up to them and say, my dad's just a fireman, or my dad's just my dad's just a chemical engineer, or my dad's just a triage nurse or whatever. Your dad, he knows Luke Skywalker, and he knows the Howard.
Right.
So they like that stuff.
It's a cool factor.
It's a cool factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then as they move into their teenage years, it's like, oh, Dad, you and your stupid comics.
Right.
Right.
Why can't you work on a cool show, Dad?
Yeah.
Did you work on Avatar: The Last Airbender? I think not.
Right.
Did you work on Gravity Falls? No.
I think I saw Kate Beckinsale being interviewed, and they're asking her daughter. She said that her daughter wanted to be an actor, and she said, "Oh, so you want to act like mommy?" She goes, "No, I want to be a real actor." It's like you can't win. Even if you're Kate Beckinsale, you're not cool enough. So
no, you can't.
You want to
Peter
see
Tommy.
some coloring? Should I switch?
Yeah, put it up.
Yeah,
Peter Tommy, you guys got any questions?
I did. What you can remember, give us a crazy story about these guys back at the office over there. Back in the day. Give us something that they won't tell us about. If you remember, I know that's a few years back. But,
well, I'm not going to tell the Roland story.
Yeah, no, we need it. We need it. I mean, he's told your stories, so.
I will tell you.
I haven't told all of Tom's stories.
No, I'll tell a Curtis one.
Okay. Give us a Curtis story.
So we met the Malibu. When I say we, I mean the Malibu people. We met Curtis when you were like, what, 14, 13, 14, 15, somewhere like that?
Yeah.
And you were a kid, and I believe you showed up at the office because you found out that we made comic books locally.
Yeah, my dad had gotten me a tour of the place, and then a week later I showed up to I basically chased Chris Solm's car down in the parking lot and begged for him to let me work at Malibu. So
yes, that's how you got in, and then you sort of became like the odd job guy.
Yeah,
like whatever. Like we don't really have a job for you. You can't be an editor. You can't be an employee because you're too young. You can't be whatever. So you'd be like the photocopy person or the organizing person or whatever until you just kept coming, and then we had to pay. Did we start paying you? Didn't we?
Yeah, eventually. Yeah, you started paying me, and then I worked under Roland eventually. But yeah, I was the gopher basically.
Right. Yeah. You were like Corporal O'Reilly on MASH, and then it's like, well, Curtis is always here. Maybe we should put him to work, and then maybe we should pay him, and then maybe we should give him a title, and then maybe we should give him a job. If you want to. Considering the ways we all broke into comics, when I tell people how you break into comics, like, well, let me tell you about Curtis. Here's how Curtis broke in. Curtis got a tour. Curtis then just showed up and kept showing up until finally we gave him stuff to do. Now, that sounds like the plot of like a Lifetime movie where people get killed, but
Curtis was out in the parking lot washing people's cars that didn't want their cars washed just so he could be around. Yeah.
When I left for college, I had thank goodness I'd done this. I got a big hardcover sketchbook, and I got all the different artists and people to sign, and like a yearbook, to draw pictures for me and stuff. And I got Roger Robinson to draw prototype, and then I had you sign it. And I was quite the photocopy king back in the day. And I still remember, Tom, you signed it and you gave it back to me, and I opened it up, and there was this great illustration of prototype with a word balloon by you that said, "Curtis, I will always admire your photocopying skills." and I still have it probably to this day.
And before you turn your badge in, we need some stuff photocopied before you leave.
HR needs some photocopies.
Sorry, can't share.
That's right.
Sorry about that.
You can't?
No.
Oh.
Can we try?
Cassisi says,
Not
I love
sure.
this story. Way to go, Curtis. Persistence matters, and you weren't afraid to be an apprentice. That's so awesome.
Oh, thanks. Yes,
I like apprentice better than gopher.
yeah. It's a fine line between stalking and being persistent, and that's
right.
So be careful.
You had the award-winning Curtis personality, though.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I had a Malibu story that I don't know if Roland or Tom remembers, but I always think about it as a funny one, and it just shows you the dynamic at that company, how open everybody was. We had a character named Rafferty that was basically in the Ultraverse that was a serial killer, for he would kill off all the superpowered characters. And so I told Roland, we'd been to several conventions, I said, hey Roland, what if we get somebody to dress up like Rafferty, and then we'll have another person dress up like a new Malibu character, and we'll have him like murder the guy like live at a convention, what do you think? And instead of Roland saying, you're crazy, he goes, you should talk to Tom about that. So I'll never forget, I went to Tom, and the fact that like a kid in high school could go up to these people who were like the heads of the company and just on a whim pitch an idea. So I told Tom my idea. I said, yeah, and then Rafferty could come out and murder the person. And I still remember Tom saying, Curtis, that's not going to work out because the only character that we have a costume for is Mantra. And if he kills her, her breasts are going to pop out in front of everybody.
And then Tom goes, that's a good idea. We could sell more books.
Why would that happen if she died?
It always happens when a woman dies.
Because the thing is that because the Mantra costume costs like several $1,000s.
That's a nice costume.
It was only held together with like tape.
Yeah.
And so
on purpose.
And it was fitted just for her, wasn't it?
It was what?
It was fitted to fit her. I forget her name.
Caroline.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It was tailored for her size.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. And so, and I already had to get people to follow around behind her to keep the fans away.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to risk some sort of costume malfunction by having her fall down.
I still remember, the directions. Okay, here's the deal. She's going to be Mantra. Here's what you can do. Here's what you can't do. Keep the fans. Don't let them touch her. You're right.
Well, we had to clear all that with her because because she wasn't a comic book fan,
right?
And so she was an actress and a model, and she's not prepared for the thing that we were going to put her into, which was a giant pit full of guys. And so, we have to explain it to her. She has to explain back what she's comfortable with and not comfortable with. And then we have to explain to the staff who's going to follow her around. Yeah. These people are going to try every possible way to get, some kind of contact with her.
Yes.
Either physical or verbal, so they can go, I talked to her.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They were going to do anything they could to put their arms around her in a picture.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And to put their hand where it shouldn't be.
Right.
And so that's why I had, I tried all the time. I had to have a guy for physicality, but I would also have another woman follow around because a woman is more acutely aware of things,
right,
than another guy would be, because we're all just stupid guys. Right. And so I thought that having another woman there would be a more watchful eye.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, that was interesting times.
Yeah.
And that's not something that you get trained for, really. Like when Dave and I start publishing Dark Wolf or whatever, it's like, hey, I bet one day we have a model walking around, and then we have to have security to keep people from touching her.
Yeah.
So you start acquiring these odd skills as you move forward.
Oh, definitely. Tom, I don't know if you recall, and I don't know, Roland, if you do, but I remember just before the sale to Marvel, and I think it was somebody.
Oh no! Here we go. We're going to go into.
No, it's just not about why, but I remember somebody gave me, because I used to work the photostat machine, gave me an image of Mantra with Batman. That was like a piece of promo art, and so I'm assuming that was when there were talks. I can't remember who did the art, but did I remember that correctly? It was like basically to pitch what it would look like if we were with DC, or can anybody comment on it?
We were at WonderCon in '94, Paul Levitz approached us and said, you know, if you guys ever need anything, you know, I'm around.
Wow.
And so then when WSC, who were the corporate investors, wanted to sell the company and get out before the market crashed and they lost their investment, Scott initiated talks with Paul to have DC buy Malibu Comics.
Wow.
And then that was secret for a long time until it started to look like it was going to happen. Chris knew it. I knew it. Dave knew it. Scott knew it because we'd been in the DC meetings. And then we let Roland into it. And Dan and Hank were let into it. And then when it got to be close, we were going to start getting material ready so that we could pitch possible crossovers or one-shot books or whatever. And somebody, I think at that point, Hank would have been the Mantra editor, wasn't he?
No, that was me.
Roland.
Yeah.
Okay. So at one point, then some pieces of art were put together so that we could pitch. Basically, once DC bought the company, then we'd be like, you know, boom, 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 ready to go.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I was just told to do it and not to ask any questions. So it took about 30 years I can finally ask. So.
Curtis, be a good boy and don't tell.
That's right. So this question may be a little deep, Tom.
No.
Let me start with
Is it one where I hold a grudge?
No.
Okay.
And it's not going to be why did Marvel?
Oh no.
All right, go deeper then.
That's every day on Facebook.
So I know there's a lot. I know there's going to be a lot of options for this. But as you look back on your time at Malibu, what's one of the things that you look back on and say, you know what, I'm really proud of that thing right here that we did, or this is kind of it might be a book, it might be a thing, just in general. What's something that you look back on at Malibu and say, I'm glad that this happened and I was there, or I did it, or that kind of thing.
I did it. I did it all. It was all.
Well, it's funny because Curtis said something about being approachable, and for the longest of time, I didn't even know who Scott was. Right. Because Scott was tucked away in his office.
We kept people away from Scott.
Right. Well, and I learned that later, right?
What did you show up one day? I'm going to go talk to Scott, and they go, "No, you're not."
I always thought of Malibu as the three of you.
Yeah, well, because Scott doesn't read the books, you know.
Right.
Scott knows. Here's the great thing about Scott is that I'll get to your answer in a second, Roland. The great thing about Scott is that if you need a guy to basically go through the spreadsheet and realize that if we print X number of books a month and we print them on this paper and we make an extra half cent, in profit by using this paper at this printer for this many books at these print runs, we will save, $80,000 a year.
Wow.
That's Scott.
Yeah.
If you want a guy to say, what should we do with issue 3 of Mantra, or how should the crossover work? Like that's not the Scott thing.
Right.
Like if you have, and he'll have an opinion and it will be horrendously wrong.
And that's the Scott that I got to see after y'all left.
Right. And so, and he's probably listening right now. But Scott's genius is with figures.
Yeah.
And contracts, like the way the Ultra Force cartoon show was put together is that there's a toy deal on the table, and there's a syndication company called Bobot that will put a TV show on the air, and there's an animation studio in Korea that will make the show, but nobody will commit until somebody else does.
Right.
Which means no one's going to commit and the show's not going to get made. So Scott, the genius of Scott is Scott goes to each of them and says the other people are in, but they're not in.
Right.
He goes to the toy company and says the animation company's in, and I got a deal for the syndication. He goes to the syndicator and says, I got the toy money. I got the money from the animation studio. They're in, and the toy people are going to put in this much money to the budget of each episode. And he goes to the animation studio. He flies to Korea, goes to the animation studio, and gives gifts to all the people that are going to animate the show, and tells them, I got the syndication deal and I got the toy company in. And so then everybody,
He makes the deals.
It's a web of lies, and it sounds horrible, but that's the way business gets done in any industry.
Yeah.
And then you get a show, and then you get toys, and then you get stuff on the air. And so that's the genius of Scott, is being able to balance all of that. Where he falls apart is, hey, what if Prototype does
right?
And then it's
Story.
like, yeah, Scott, go count something. So
count something.
All right. So the thing that I'm proudest of.
Yeah.
I will tell you this. The thing that I'm proud of, the thing that I look back on fondly is being in the office surrounded by a bunch of people and basically laughing my ass off as everybody created stuff. I like the sense, and I understand that my position in the company was a lot different than other people, and that other people were basically employees, whereas I was, Kim Jong-un or something of the company. I get all of that, but I liked that everybody was around. I liked the open office. I liked that you could really talk to anybody that you could get a hold of, that you could pitch the stupidest idea possible. And there were enough, like, we had this thing that we built up early on that, well, yeah, of course there's stupid ideas, but there really aren't any stupid ideas, because the guy who brings up a stupid idea, or the person who brings up a stupid idea, they're not stupid. The idea might be stupid,
right?
But that stupid idea, we all laugh at it and go, oh, what a stupid idea. And then 5 minutes later, other people have thrown out a bunch of other stuff. And that leads to, we could bring that stupid idea back and we could work it into this mix and twist it around. And then boom. So I like the open sort of concept of that, and everybody going out to lunch and everybody hanging out. And, we had a baseball team. We had, we'd go bowling, we go to the movies, we would do all that stuff. I like that. I've never been in an office before or since that was as loose and as crazy and, in many ways as wrongheaded as that was. And that stems from Dave and Chris and myself wanting to create a place where we didn't feel like we were dragging our ass out of bed to go to, a thing called work. It's like, we're making comic books. The least we could do is make it interesting and fun.
Well, and it's fun because I think you achieved that, because I'm not a morning person usually.
No,
before or after, but I didn't have problems getting up to go to work at Malibu. My alarm went off. I got up, and of course it was early and I was sleeping and everything, but I didn't have problems. I didn't wake up and going, oh man, I got to go to work today. I didn't have that.
And we tried, as corporate as we got, we tried not to be so top down that people couldn't do their jobs. Like I'm sure it happened, but people higher up were not hovering over the colorist going, no, that needs to be more blue, or no, that needs to be more orange, or I remember, God, I probably shouldn't tell this story.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. Roberta's like, tell it.
Right. So this is a Bob Jacobs story. This is one of those things that Curtis alludes to, where I'm a weasel.
I didn't say that.
So at the Westlake Village office, when we had merged with a video game company, the comic book people were in one building, and the video game people were in a different building across town in Westlake Village, so like 4 miles away or whatever. And every day Bob Jacob would come over, because he was now the co-president of the company. He would come over and he would walk through the office and he would start picking up artwork on everybody's desk.
Oh.
He'd start looking through the film before it went to the premiere. And he'd start going, like he's the king or something. Oh, I don't like the way this hand is drawn, or I don't like the way this belt looks, or this, whatever. Because, he's in his mind anyway, he's the boss, and this is what a boss does. And then he would sit for like 2 hours in Chris's cubicle and demand Chris's attention, and without any understanding that, we have a FedEx deadline at 4:30,
right?
And Chris has to still dialogue some pages. He's still got to read some stuff and prove some stuff before it goes out. He doesn't have time for a 2-hour conversation with Bob and his theories about comic books and whatever is on Bob's mind. And Bob would sit there, and so we go to Scott. And we said, look, Scott, we can't get anything done because Bob keeps coming in, and he's he's bitching about all the artwork that he sees that, for some reason he doesn't like, even though 7 other people have approved it in the system. And then he's monopolizing Chris's time. So, we're not getting so done. And Scott goes, well, he's the company guy. He owns the company. I don't know what to do. You guys should talk. And so we're not going to talk to Bob. So we have this meeting, and the meeting it's me and it's Roland and it's Mike Brown and it's Dan and it's Hank and it's Chris and it's Dave Obrich, and what are we going to do? We're not going to be able to stop it. And I'll take the heat for this as my idea, but I don't think it was my idea. What if we treat Bob like he's a visitor? And so we made a deal with the receptionist, and we said, look, every time you see Bob's car in the parking lot, call us. Mm-hmm. And then, so Bob drives in, and we get a call. Bob just pulled up.
Right.
Wait, thanks. And then we would all take turns, and we would make sure that on Roland's desk there'd be some artwork that he wanted to show. On Chris's desk there'd be some artwork to show. On Mike Brown's desk there'd be some art to show, and Hank's desk, whatever. And then whoever's turn it was would pick up Bob. The bullpen was shaped like a U, and we'd pick up Bob at the top of the U, and we would just greet him like he was a visitor, or like he was, like a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
And we would basically walk him through the office and say, "Hey, Bob, it's great to see you. Here's Alan. He's working on this ad campaign. Isn't that great?" And we realized that if we told Bob something was great before he could really see it, then he would assume it was great. And so then he would pass by Chris's desk, and Chris would pretend to be on the phone. And so, say, Chris can't talk right now. He's on he's talking to, Mike Barr or James Hudnall about something. And then he's got a lunch meeting, but, and then Chris would turn around from the phone and sort of wave at Bob. And then we take him over to Roland's desk, and Roland would pick up a thing that he knew was good. And he would say to Bob, "Look at what just came in today, Bob. Isn't this great?" And then he'd go to the next desk. "Look at this, Bob. Isn't this great?" And the next desk, "This, Bob. Isn't this great?"
Oh my goodness.
Before Bob realized it, we had walked him through the U to the other top of the U, and he was out in the hallway at the doorway in this console.
Towards the exit.
Yeah, he was done.
Oh wow!
He never caught on. So we did that until we moved to the new building.
Because he says dog and
That's
pony
amazing.
show is what we
Dog
used
and
to
pony,
call
there
it.
it is. It's exactly. We didn't call it that. We called it the Bob problem. But
Among other things.
among other things. So
Yeah.
So it's a very passive aggressive way of getting stuff done.
Yeah.
That's genius.
Okay, and then the last question, as our clock is winding down, as it as always does, on the other end of the spectrum, Tom, is there, as you look back on the time at Malibu, is there anything that you regret? Like, I wish we had done this, or we should have done this, or I hate that we couldn't do this, or we would have been better off if we done, I wish I had worked with this guy instead of turning him over to, I wish I'd worked with Walter Koenig instead of letting Roland work with him.
I think I was part of the deal that got Walter Koenig, and then I immediately turned him over to you. So
Yeah.
I think I wish I can't say things would have turned out differently because I know what the plan was, but I wish the company had been sold to DC
instead of Marvel. Yeah,
instead of Marvel, and it's not because, well, there are two things. One is that you remember Mike Giles?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought Mike was a genius, and Mike had this idea that as a way for Malibu to survive, that we spin off the coloring department as a separate company. Basically, the colorist would still stay in the building, and Mike would basically be the head of this new division or the new company, and then Giles would go out and he would solicit coloring work from other companies,
right?
Like everybody, like Valiant, DC, Marvel, whatever. And that was totally, his idea. He came in and he pitched it, and we were like ready to go with that. Like that would have been a thing. And so I wish that had happened. and I don't know why that happened, but I was all for it.
Yeah.
Because that's a way to keep the colorists doing Ultraverse books, but also bring in extra money. And we might have been able to hire more colorists.
Yeah.
Basically, you make enough money, you bring in more colorists, and then, it just sort of builds on it. So I would have liked to have done that. I would have liked to have cut the video game division loose much sooner. I wanted to cut it in early 94 and be rid of it because it wasn't working. Like once Bob was pushed out of the company, I thought it was a good opportunity to just not do those things.
Yeah.
Because they drained the company funds. Like the way the company was
a lot of money. Yep.
The way the company was originally set up is the comic book division was solid. It made its own money. And the video game division was solid. It made its own money. But then Bob had sort of ruined the video game division through his Bobness.
Right.
And the video game division was now draining money out of the comic book division. So the comic book division was supporting both halves of the company, which was not the original plan.
Right.
And so then that's when the comic book division started to lose all of its money. And I think the comic books could have survived and the company didn't have to be sold if we jettisoned the video game division sooner.
Yeah.
And so I sort of regret those things.
Yeah.
And I wish DC had bought the company because I know what Paul was going to do. Because Paul told me what he was going to do.
Right.
And I think the company would have. It's funny. And again, I don't know how much time we have left, but Malibu Comics and the building were going to be the West Coast DC.
Right.
And so, in theory, DC would never have had to move to Burbank.
Mm-hmm.
If Paul had gotten his wish to have Malibu set up as a West Coast DC plus Malibu Comics, then the people in Burbank at Warner might have been okay with just, we've got a comic book division of DC. It's just here in, Agora Hills. We don't have to move everybody over from New York. So there's, again, in theory, DC might have stayed in New York City and Malibu would have prospered as a functional asset of DC Comics. I don't know if that means the Ultraverse would have survived or not, but more people might have kept their jobs and more stuff might have gotten done because he had projects for the West Coast DC that were going to make us better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, we see what, I often say the same thing. It was like, I wish, of course I didn't have any say on it, but I wish that it had been DC instead of Marvel, because I don't know that would have guaranteed life exponentially, but I think it would have been longer and certainly different than what ended up happening with Marvel. I mean, Marvel already had, they were headed toward bankruptcy anyway.
Yes.
And so I think it would have been different. So,
and I say all of this fully understanding that the Marvel people that I met, I liked quite a bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I still like the ones that I still run into. I still hang out with and talk to. I loved working with those guys. They were in a really tough spot.
Yeah.
And it was just, but the Goldman Sachs a-holes who had the largest investment in Malibu Comics needed to get that money out before they lost everything. And that's what happens when you take in the wrong partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well,
hasn't this been fun?
It has been lots of fun.
Very fun.
So
Tom Mason has dragged everybody down again with his.
No, hey, listen, I asked the question.
Venture capitalists and Goldman Sachs, and, douchebags.
Well, the thing about it is, me and Roberta and Curtis, we've talked about things like this before. But you're one of the founders, so for me, it's like, okay, what's as you look back, what are some of the things that you look on and say, hey, I wish this had happened or that would happen. I mean, I didn't even get to ask you about Paramount, because I remember a really brief window when we almost became Paramount Comics.
Yes.
That's never talked about in any of the stuff that people talk about the history of, it's like, why won't somebody mention that? I was so excited about that at the time.
Yes. We'll have to go.
I will ask you back. I will ask you to return.
Part two.
At some point, ask me about the meeting that Chris and I had in Malibu, the city of Malibu,
Okay.
with Jerry Calabrese and Joe King.
Nice.
Okay.
I think he's writing it down.
That story might have to be told off the air.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So yeah, we'll get you back and talk about stuff, because I'd love to kind of get into obviously some storytelling and you know, how some craft kind of stories.
Okay.
And I know that Tom, you are slated to hop on with the Wednesday crew on the 30th. You still good for that, right? The 30th.
Yes.
Okay.
Is this the same bunch? Because I have issues.
No, it's a different group.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I don't have issues. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So they're gonna, and they'll ask you completely. They may ask you some of the same questions, but they'll ask you totally different questions. Dean Zachary will be the host that night, and you know Dean.
I know Dean. We've talked about Dean behind his back before.
See who else might you know?
I almost was in a position to hire Dean a couple of months ago.
Oh,
but
you
you
were almost in a position, so you didn't get into the business.
I talked to Dean about it because you know. But I warned him. Ahead of time. Look, the guy I'm dealing with might be flaking out, but I just want to touch base. And if things fall through and money shows up, are you around?
Right. Yeah.
So, but I can't. Don't go out and buy a new car.
Right. don't pull a Rob Liefeld. Right. Don't go buy it. We got a couple of comments here. Hi Potato, did DC express an interest in buying the company? Yeah, you missed that part.
Yeah, DC actually made an offer.
I never knew it got that far.
Yeah, the mergers and acquisitions department of Warner Brothers took over the negotiations and actually made an offer on the table.
Yeah.
But anyways, it was so much so that Bob Wayne at DC actually thought we had a deal in place.
Yeah,
it was gonna happen.
I didn't know that.
I remember that part. I remember. Hey, we're about to be bought by DC.
Yep.
The Marvel thing happened so fast.
If you remember, Roland, when we were at San Diego Con in '94, the DC people kept buzzing around the Malibu booth going, and you know,
that kind of thing.
Any day now, it's going to be us, you and me.
Yep.
And we were. Yeah. I think Hank was pitching Mike Carlin and feeling him out about crossovers at that convention.
I think so. Yeah.
And so because everything looked like it was going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Hi Potato says, I miss Malibu so much. This has been a great show, and I even missed a bit when my wife got home. Okay, so yeah, you did. You
missed all the good parts.
James says, thanks. Thank you everyone for an awesome stream. Love to hear this stuff. Hi Potato says, hire Dean. Just don't steal him from Roland.
Well, that's the thing. It's not a cutthroat business anymore. I'm not stealing anybody away to draw Spider-Man or whatever. It's just like some corporate deal that Dean would have to work into. That Dean would have to work into his own schedule. Right. So
yeah,
it's not like, oh, don't steal him from Roland.
Yeah. Well, so I know the Dean's got want to pepper you with of course, one of the things I asked you, some of what you would be interested in talking about. One of the things that you said was interesting to you would be why Marvel and DC are dead ends. And I know this is incredibly a topic of incredible interest to Dean, because back before Dean started the Cat and Mouse here a few years ago, he and I had some heated words about things like that, and we didn't exactly see eye to eye, but we had some discussions about it, so I think that will be interesting. And of course, I would actually also love to continue to pepper you with creator-owned stuff. Okay. You were always a mentor to me when it came to rights and things like that. I'd like to get on and talk about some things like that. So
I have strong opinions.
Oh, I know you do, and that's why I'd love to get you back on and talk with you about things. So it's been fun.
It's been great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Artist, good to see you again, man.
Great to see you. And if I can just. Oh
yeah.
I just want to, Malibu is to this day is still one of the fondest memories I ever have. It's almost unfortunate it's the first job I ever had because everything was downhill from there. But when we talked about how fun it was and all that, it was never like when I went to a company and there was some mission statement and this is how we treat people and this is this. It was something that was organic that came from you and the founders and everybody there. So I just always want to thank you for that. Just tremendous experience. And
You're very welcome. And you'll notice we're also speaking to each other.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I talk to Dave. Dave and Chris and I text each other almost every day. I
great.
see. We have a Zoom on Fridays, me and Chris and Dave and our friend Paul O'Connor, where we just do stuff like this.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be at WonderCon, and I'm gonna be at San Diego again this year. So,
Great.
Nice.
because I haven't gotten COVID yet, and I'm looking forward to it.
you might as well. Everybody else has. So.
I don't like to be left out. I have this feeling where things are happening and I'm not a part of it. So,
Tom, you didn't hear the pandemic's over. They didn't tell you that.
Yeah. So, well, a guy in the parking lot told me that. He's
right after he coughed on you, right?
That's right. Why are you wearing your mask?
It's over, right?
Right. It's over.
Yeah. So Tom, hang out.
Okay.
We usually hang out a little bit after our final bumper goes off. Tell people where they can find you on the interwebs, Tom.
Well, I'm on Facebook like I'm still in high school, but I don't have a website or anything. So
okay.
That's you really can't.
Facebook is it, huh?
Facebook is it, and you really can't find me. You can see me at a convention every now and then. I have people text me, constantly asking me these same kinds of questions.
Right.
That's really it. I'm not really hermity, but I don't maintain a social media presence because I don't have when I have a thing to hype, then all of a sudden I'll be on TikTok and Instagram and
Tommy loves TikTok.
I have all the snappy chat stuff.
Thank you, Roberta. What about you? Where can folks find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on usually just Facebook and Instagram under Roberta Conroy. So that would be it. Or out here on Sundays.
That's right. Fantastic. Pete, what about you? Where can folks find you on the interwebs?
Oh, just type Peter Clinton art into the Google, and there I shall be. I'm everywhere.
Curtis, and you?
Sure. For me, you can find me 2 places, has all my social media. You can go to for my upcoming comic book, theshadowghost.com, and for my martial arts school, which is online now, is tigercrane.net. And if you haven't checked it out yet, I have to recommend Geek View Tavern that Tom and Dave Ulbrich do. It's a really, really, really fun show. So you guys should check that out. They had the Ultraverse.
That's another place you can see me.
Yeah, great show.
Tommy, what about you? Where can folks find you on the interwebs?
Just go on the Google and type Florimonte. I'm the only one. I think I'm the only one. FLORIMONTE, and you'll find me. Or go to InfernoStudios.com. Some links are there. You can find me at everywhere else. Just look up Florimonte. I'm the only one. Otherwise, it's my dad.
For you?
Yep. No, I'm like Mr. Pete. He's way up. This is like 4:00 in the morning for Pete.
No, it's not that bad, no. If you can just keep this time difference, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. We have just Pete. I don't know if you saw it, but the U.S. Congress people just voted to keep this time. We're not changing anymore
until we don't.
Until we change it again.
Like there's half of Arizona will or something like that.
Right. Hey, so if we want to talk about rights and stuff and gang up on Dean Zachary, we should bring in Barry Gregory.
I would love that.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
because he's been doing some stuff, and I did a Zoom thing with him I think last year, and he's got some good stuff going on too. So
he's my business partner with Kablam. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. And I'm Roland. You can find me at all over the interwebs, wherever there are social media. Just look for Roland Man. Don't forget, I forgot to hype it already. Don't forget, we've got a Kickstarter going on. We've got 7 days left to go. Go back Wolf Hunter and Sirens. We are still chasing stretch goal. We're funded, but we're still chasing some stretch goals. So get on over there, check it out, back it if you can, share it if you will. And remember, until then, remember to make mine Silverline. Good night, everybody.
Hey, I'm Alex Saviuk, and I just want to let you know, make mine Silverline.